and without decorating the well-decorated CV, and I was just repeating what was in the CV, allow me to call our lecturer for the night, Dr. Elijah Tjitunga Ngurare.
Thank you very much. The once youngest district secretary for the Youth League in history of the SWAPO party. He was the district secretary for Tobias Ainyeko, but now he has beard. He has come of age. Since it is a class, let me welcome all of you, the students in class. The very important student, Lizel, Uhadet, the future belongs to them. So welcome. Yeah. Last time when I was invited by AR was the 4th of July, 2015. And Harambee NBC came to capture me. And they went to report us, then we were expelled. So now I'm here again. I don't know what the consequences of this is. Whether it is expulsion or thunder, I don't know. Needless to say, I want to commend the young people, Joe Pampanda, George Kambala, and Dino Yoma, and all of you young people who have remained jiggy on the principles of your generation and not betrayed. I think you deserve a round of applause. I want to welcome all of you. Of course, we know that this is a classroom where we are not one political party. We are all from all various political parties. Blue always joked that some come from Mbishi party. Mbishi party is, Mbishi is what is English for Mbishi? It's a cat party. So in other words, everybody is important, and each one of you is important. Elders that are here, we welcome you. I see my good sister who's doing a fine job with the Patriot. The Patriot has made a niche for itself. It's a newspaper that young and old are not missing on a Friday. So we commend you immensely. And also my sister, Kasiko Mkadigospweka of Insight Magazine. Thank you for being here, together with the crew I see there. Ladies and gentlemen, all of you, and of course I see Comrade Kafita has become with the beard, I don't know what happened. He's a Taliban. Comrade Hiwana, I can see marriage is really nice. Yeah. All of you that are here, including those that are dispatched with particular information and assignment to report back, you are also acknowledged immensely, and hopefully, because it is raining, we pray that you will relay very good information in the interest of Harambee. And Patrick, very good to see you. I dance to that music too from time to time, but not as good as you do. Yeah, so really I'm very happy and humbled to have been invited. I accepted to be here to speak about an issue that is very profound to all of us. It's a generational issue, and we will say it the way it must be said. Yeah, fellow you now, you're here too. Yeah, so if I'm expelled from UNAM, you are the witness. It's a topic that I think all of us can relate to. And I hope thereafter we can engage in some questions. I was asked to make a paper. Now, you see these young people, they are very naughty. They wanted me to write a paper about this discussion. And then some media, this France, they want me to give talking points, maybe so that they can hold me to it. Generally, of course, I prefer to speak off the cuff. It is more natural. I will try to do that where possible, but of course, they can have theirs. Of course, Professor Joe, you are promoted now. Yeah. Now, the topic we have chosen is intergenerational politics and what we call the dream of sustainable development. We picked intergenerational politics. For those of you who are familiar with international environmental law, you know that there are principles in international law, and there are many lawyers. I see Taimi, them are here, Chimtukeni and others. Saki is here, yes. Kadila, and all of them, the lawyers are here. They would know these principles of international law. Particularly from 1972. Welcome from Oranienburg. From 1972, there was the Stockholm Conference on Human Development, as it was called. And that set the stage of developing certain principles of how to manage the environment, of course, how to balance that with development. Specifically, at that time, there was no particular emphasis placed on defining sustainable development per se, but they did make reference to various concepts that would mean, or at least imply, sustainable development. And the principles are listed. Specific for this talk today, we can look at Principle 21 and Principle 2, which is more relevant, on how any generation should be able to manage the resources or the economic wealth of the country for the benefit of those that are living and for the benefit of those that are yet unborn. In other words, some of the lexicography is called future generations. And it was not until 1987 when former Minister of Environment was tasked by the UN General Assembly to head a commission which was called Our Common Future. It was then that sustainable development was defined. And it is in there where intergenerational equity equally emerged. So therefore we can start this discussion by going to 1987. How many of you were the chromosomes were formed by that time? 87? Oh, very good. You are good witnesses. So 87, specifically then, this whole concept of sustainable development was born. Namely, manage the resources of your respective country in such a way that those present must benefit from it and those yet unborn must equally not be prejudiced, so that they too must enjoy their livelihood from it. And that is sustainable development. And then, of course, I'm sure so many of you are aware of the Rio Summit. Tamwa, I couldn't see you, I was looking for you. Lazarus Jacob, he's our veteran. Welcome, Tamwa. Yeah. And many of you would recall that in 1992, there was a big summit which was called Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, where hundreds of presidents and thousands of NGOs, journalists, etc., went to attend what would become the defining moment in environmental protection, particularly in the aspects of consolidating or crystallizing international environmental principles. And these are now the principles, and there are so many, but they include precautionary principle, polluter pays principle. I think we know these principles, isn't it? Polluter pay, it means that if you pollute, you pay. Precautionary principle is particularly relevant for, very relevant for some of the brothers and sisters who are speaking of wanting to embark on certain environmental projects. That before you embark on any project, you must make sure that you take precaution, especially when such a project has adverse environmental impact. That's precautionary principle. And then, of course, intergenerational equity, then common but differentiated responsibility, where developed countries have a responsibility to assist those countries that are not developed in exchange and transfer of technology and so forth. Of course, there are others in here to whom these principles are very well known. This is just the background to why we chose this intergenerational politics to set a stage that we speak in environmental terms, but also to speak in political terms. And contextualize that on the one hand, you have a battle between development and environment, but on the other, you actually have the battle between the young and the old in the management of the resources of the country. Of course, geographically, we are speaking of Namibia, but the concepts that we speak of today can apply anywhere in Africa. So, for us, for example, as you know, our constitution was arrived at through consensus. Some of you will call it other names, but it was brought about by those other people we call Western Contact Group. We know them, isn't it? Yeah, France, West Germany, Canada, England, US, there are 5. What's the other one? West Germany, Canada, USA, UK, France. So 5. These are the ones that dictated, or at least that were part of what is called Western Contact Group. So they assisted us, for lack of a better word, to come up with our constitution. But despite whatever shortcomings our constitution might have, Article 95 in particular speaks about environmental protection in ways and in tone and rhythm that actually speaks to the multilateralism of environmental protection as contemplated in 1972, 1987, 1992, and lo and behold, you know also of a UN big meeting that took place on the African continent. Which one was that? Johannesburg Summit, 2002, was it? You remember where the founding president told Blair off? Yes, that was in Johannesburg. Now, the principles as contained in our constitution on Article 95 are very progressive and forward-looking. And then you take Article 100, it equally then speaks to the state sovereignty or sovereignty over our resources. Of course, there is a caveat to the end of that provision, which says, unless it is lawfully owned. Generations present here today and generations yet unborn will probably talk more about what that means and what the implication of that is. Be that as it may, it is a progressive provision, and which we hope maybe one of those days it needs to be revisited. But the point I'm setting the stage for is to say the following. Maybe some of you have heard of this being said, and I want to quote. I conceive that land belongs to a vast family of whom many are dead, a few are living, and countless hosts are still unborn, and unquote. And guess what? That is coming from a traditional leader somewhere in Africa, in this case specifically in Ghana. If you listen to the phraseology used, that is no different from the definition I have alluded to of sustainable development. So which means, to come to our context, is that it may be true that those who have degrees and those who have had access to education, particularly Western education, might have been exposed to certain terms and to certain measure of education. But maybe common sense education is found in our villages. Because this is a traditional leader speaking better than some phraseologies that we know. So what am I saying in the context of intergenerational politics? I want now to come to the point where we try to interrogate what precisely am I referring to when I speak of intergenerational politics. Now, so many of you are aware the conundrum, for lack of a better word. We can then say that these elders have been monopolizing political power. And then there is perhaps an understandable impatience on the part of the young Turks, as we would want them known, that no man, you have been in power for too long, you didn't do anything for us. But here is the irony. The irony is that maybe they have been in power for long, but also the fact remains that they had made provision for the young ones to go to school, imperfect as that school system is. Let's take, for example, Zimbabwe. Those who are highly educated in Africa, most of them are from Zimbabwe. Is that true or not? Most of those who are highly educated may be from Nigeria. True or not? In this room, most of those who are highly educated are from Namibia. True or not? We have doctors. There's a doctor there, Dr. Kanime. There's Dr. Ipinge. There are journalists. Maybe there are other doctors. Yeah. There are doctors in business. There are doctors in swimming. There are doctors in Kachikiriri. Like Maingumwe, she's also a doctor in her own right. Some are lawyers. Now the point I'm trying to say here is that yes, we can say that, wait a minute, these elders have overstayed, but they made provision for us to study. And as Shakespeare would say, but there is the rub. So how come then that the elders have been able to make provision for us to study or for you to study, as if to forget that with time you will amass some kind of expertise which expertise would require that you have to question certain things. Asho? Yeah, some are pilots, by the way. Maybe the problem then of this intergenerational politics comes precisely at how we view the countries that we now call independent today. So if Job is a lecturer, is a professor, now somebody is 87-year-old and works in his class, what do you think the impression of that elder would be by looking at the person entering as a professor? Maybe there will be resistance. What can he teach me, this young one? What can he tell me, this young one? And then we extrapolate this further. So assets, you can now take note. For example, there are so many of you who have heard and continue to hear some lexicography in our political body, in our body politic. You hear that the problem is these young people. You hear that these AR are a problem. You hear that they have no manners. Even for some of you to come to these lectures, you are probably branded as a troublemaker. You are going to the anti-government body. You are going to somebody who don't like the current administration. You are against peace and security. And you know what is the irony about it? The same people saying so, when these German foundations invite them to frog counting, they run. They don't question it in a bit. They just run. Eh? Osham kweli to popi popi. Oshoye to taromeho. Eh? Monawo mkweni yoka. Ngakagura komse. I heard about that song before. Do you know about that song? So the thing that you have planted yourself, your own children, you don't want them. But you don't even know from Adam or Eva where these German foundations are coming from. But you are fine with it. So is the problem the age of these young people? Or is the problem somewhere between heaven and earth? And where Catholics will call purgatory. You have heard of the word purgatory? Have you heard of it? Purgatory is a concept that when you die, you don't go directly to heaven. You are supposed to hang around somewhere there. And wait until the day. And that day may not come. So I'm saying, if we can agree, and I hope we do, that Article 100 of the Namibian Constitution says that the resources of this country belongs to the state, and the state is us, the people, isn't it? And demographically, by the way, our population has been estimated not by the one speaking, but by an institution of government. It's called Namibia Statistic Agency. It has said that over 50% of the Namibian population is made up of young people. Have you ever heard of that? Have you heard of that? Okay. So if you have heard of that, now let's suppose that we have uranium, we have copper, we have diamond, we have all these other nice-sounding minerals. And I say nice-sounding because for some of us, for some of you, These are only things you entertain with the vibration of your eardrums. You have never seen and you probably will never see until you return to purgatory. Because it is protected in such a way that you can't see it. Yeah, you are just told we have uranium. Yeah, how many of you have seen uranium? Yeah, she has seen it. How many of you have seen and touched diamond? 1, 2, 3, okay. Copper? Yeah, you see? Yes. You have a community kandume, have you seen? You are 2 kandumes. 1 kandume, the other kandume. We have not seen it, but we are told, we have it. Huh? So, let's assume we have all these things. Now, you are more than 50% of the population as young people, right? So, you are a shareholder of that wealth. When is it that you are going to become a beneficiary of that wealth? When is it? Or maybe some of you are already beneficiaries. How many of you are beneficiaries? The question I'm asking is at the core of what we are speaking of as sustainable development. Now, if it is the case that sustainable development, insofar as it relates to the economic wealth of the country, it is only in the confines of some people who happen to be, I want to be very diplomatic, you see, who happen to be biologically disadvantaged. And biologically disadvantaged, okay, that sounds fine. Yeah, I think it sounds reasonable. By biologically disadvantaged, I mean, for many of you, you are in the morning of your lives. Some of you, you are at noon of your life. And some of you, you are in the sunset of your life, biologically. And the tricky thing is that there's nothing you can do. You can't put in an amendment to biology. Unfortunately, and I say that respectfully. So then, in this discussion of intergenerational politics vis-a-vis the dream of sustainable development, if I come from Okongwati or I come from Mdaungilo, you see then, for some reason, I come to Windhoek, and then it dawns on me that we have what we call a map of Namibia, a map defined by what they call EPLs. And what do they call that? Exploration, what is it? Expecting licenses. Is that a correct phraseology? Prospecting. So then you look at it on the map. Please, if you haven't seen it, after this lecture, go and look for it. It is in the Ministry of Friends. It's called also Mines and Energy. Did I say that right? I mean, well, so you know what I mean? I mean, that ministry, it's somewhere that side. It's next to Eros. Yes, yeah, I mean that one. Yeah. So when you go there, respectfully, you can even kneel down if you have to. Just ask for that map. It's a Namibian map, by the way. It's just that it's a Namibian map which has been annotated with who is a beneficiary, or which part and portion of Namibia is allocated to who and who and who. And you will be shocked. You will see that almost all of it is occupied, not affirmatively, I mean occupied. That map is gone. And it is a map that defines the economic wealth of the country. the natural resources of the country. And this map is there. I saw it. I'm sure there are some of you who have seen it. And if you are always on the verge of rubbing yourself with emotions, you might cry when you see it. Because if you look at that map and study it, you will begin to realize that when we speak of a dream of sustainable development, chances are some of you who are still blessed with the hope of biologically putting together the chromosomes to make future young Namibians, that they will actually have nothing to call theirs in respect of that land. Now let us assume we are now here today and we have knowledge of this, that the map is gone, that somehow, somewhere things are not happening right. Is it a sin to speak against it? Is it a sin to speak against it? I read somewhere where Lenin, because we always say that we we rub shoulders with former Soviet Union, etc., etc. He encouraged people to have constructive engagement and differ even critique one another. So how come then, if we say, for instance, that no, these resources are skewedly being distributed to benefit only one age group or to benefit only some friends of friends and friends of friends? And then when you say that, Anua, you are against peace and security. What? Peace and stability. You have heard of so many projects. The new parliament, it is not against peace and stability. It is, yeah. New parliament, it's good for peace and stability. Phosphate, don't say anything. It is not good. It's good for peace and stability. Tobacco is also good. Don't say anything. And I think that, in fact, for those who are being pretentious and saying they have sworn oath to hand clapping, they are the enemy of the state. Because they are not telling the truth as they see it. Straight talk, they say, should not and must not kill real friendship. Now, all I'm saying then is that in terms of literature review, there are some areas in the world that have concretized what they mean by the benefit of future generations. And Finland, Poland, and Hungary are leading in that class. What they have practically done is to establish ombudsmen for future generations. Which means, if you see that this project has adverse environmental impact that may harm future generations, this ombudsman must be able to interrogate and stop such a project in the interest of future generations. And some have established funds for generation yet unborn. And you know, when we speak of future generation, this is not about politics. Yeah, when the colleagues, those of you who are assets, when you go back, just say, you see, it's not about politics, it's about stomach. You see, nobody in this room is immune to feeling hungry. is immune to feeling hungry here? Nobody.
Assets.
Yeah, even assets. You see, and I'm saying this even though jokingly, but to drive home the message. You see, generations of your generation, those of you that are young today, it's a pity. Of course, some of us are now old. And there are my senior there is older than me. This is biological. But if you look at those who are old, the Tanganyika group, you see they can fight and use you to fight. But they are together. They stand together. But your generation, some of you, it's just very funny. You know, do you know what is a parrot? Do you know what's a parrot, ne? So in the morning, if you come to a parrot and you say, good morning, it will say, good morning. And then in the afternoon, good morning. And then in the evening, good morning. It really has come to that analogy. That you look at your generation, how you are fighting each other, instead of uniting. And who are some are peacemakers. And then when you ask them, what mega peace are you talking about? They say you are anti-hugging. That's all they say. In the morning, you are anti-hugging. In the afternoon, you are anti-hugging. In the evening, you are anti-hugging. And most of these have not even voted for hugging. These young people, I repeat, himself, that one, and where's the other one? Yeah, that one and the other ones, I took them to Omitara. Even if they didn't want to vote, they voted. And they voted for the president today. But today they are being said they are the enemies. So does it mean that the vote for this one is less than the peacemakers? Yeah? So let's when we speak of this generational, each generation will define what is it that is important for them. And just like in the politics, the international politics itself, there is no country that will subordinate its economic interests in favor of another. None. You can say China is our friend, yes, but they will never leave the pursuit of their own interests to take our interests. None. No country, friends or foe, worldwide. Nobody will do that. So some of you then, while you are in the morning of your life, you are behaving like you are in the sunset of your life. And we are even lucky because we have some young people who are journalists. And even they, some of them are very good. I say, God my witness, they are very good. Oh. When they just ask them about fellow youth, oh, now me, you know, amongst all youth, I'm the best. What about that one? Oh, no, that one insulted you. When I was growing up, if you, the young person, will go to an elder and say you were insulted, they will say, what did the other person say? And you repeat it. They will beat you well, so that you will have a regrettable regret. So, finally, because I know time is going, here's what I'm saying, as Comrade Kambala has said. For this generation, you have at least 3 things that I want to leave with you. Strive for what I'm calling generational sovereignty. In other words, stand firm, united, and advocate for things that are beneficial to you. Your generation. You know it. You know those things. And nobody can tell you about one day you will live in the time of war, etc. We appreciate what our elders have done, but that generation is gone. And they are the ones we must thank for having created the conducive environment for us to realize our creativity and ingenuity. And it doesn't mean that the older generations always agree. They differ too. But you, the young ones, when you differ, you want to kill each other. Don't do that. So stand together. And the wrongs that are happening today, if you fold your hands today, like the Kavangos will say, my dear, you will have yourself to blame. Some of you, you have a passport to get to 2030. Even God is the witness. But some people, they will not reach 2030. It's not me saying, I will not wish anybody. It's not me saying it. My grandmother died. My grandfather died. My father is not there. So it's a biological footprint. We are only here in this momentary exile. One day, as Shakespeare once said, we'll die and go to that country from whose bourne no travelers ever return. Go, we must go. No matter how nice you spy for others today, you will die. And no matter how much you become Kangoma Beta Kuali, you will die. So I say there must also be generational representation, and here's what I mean on this particular aspect. There have been an effort to ensure that some of the young people are given opportunity to be able to benefit economically and politically. But you know what? When they are with you, they beg you to work together. When they climb up there, they don't know you. And some people, there are some young business people who are working very hard. There is Tamwa Lazarus Jacob. You see, some people are saying they are business people, but you have never seen their office. You have never seen their staff. You just only hear whip this side, whip that side, whip this side, whip that side, but nothing to show for it. I didn't mention names. No, I'm just saying. Some people, they say they are business people, and they're like, maybe some other kind of business. I don't know which. I'm not mentioning anything. Yeah, but really, let us be able to say, we give salutations to those who have gone before us, our elders. But it is not true, comrades. Let's also not pretend this Venduk philosophy of untruth. I don't want to say lie. You will say I'm disrespectful. I say this untruth of Venduk. Because sometimes you look at another person's child and you say that they don't respect elders. So you think that child came out of a tree? Everybody here comes from a village, from a household that raised you for you to reach this far. Isn't it? How then do you come up and say, hey, those ones, they don't respect elders? Yes, there is a distinction between air-conditioned elders that are in Venduk, who, if not for air condition, biology would have long knocked them. So it does not mean that just because you are being sustained by this air condition, there are no better freedom fighters in the villages there. There are even better elders who are and who could not sell this country in any form or shape. They are there. Even your own parents, your own grandmothers, if they were given good air condition, they will live longer. But I know some who are living longer without air condition. So the point I'm saying is that if you are appointed to a public office, it's not your household. In your household, you can do whatever you want. Practically anything. But public office accountability is expected of you. So, if we ask you, a colleague, this thing you are doing is corruption, don't say that it is because we don't have manners. It's not your house. And then some people, they are appointed in offices as ministers, as whatever. Now they have become to monopolize that office, and now is us versus them. If you are knocking there, who's there? Kafita. Was Kafita with us in 2012? So if Kasiku is asking for an appointment, who's Kasiku? No, Kasiku. Where was he in 2012? The one they forgot even that she's a she. So if there's a young doctor who has an opinion, they first want to know, this young doctor, is she not the one who always attend AR? Then they say yes. No, tell them we are busy. So, this distribution of economic wealth is skewed and defined by greed and corruption. So apparently tenders are only reserved for them and not those ones. Apparently EPLs and all those things are reserved for them and not us. Apparently this ministry is only for this one and not for that one. And I say it again, some of those who sit say, things are not good. What were you doing when you were in that meeting? They come and complain with you when they are supposed to rule. And this is both the young and the old. They come to gossip. In fact, we must now also have a special advisor for gossip and quarreling. That is what we say. Now, when we have all these things here, how are we going to implement or actualize the dream of sustainable development? Lizelle is there. What should we tell Lizelle and the generation of Lizelle? This is sustainable development. What should we tell them? And the state, do you know that there's a difference between the state and government? Some people don't, even those who are ruling, they don't. They think that the state will be with them, not even when biologists come, they will not go. No matter how powerful you think you are. Death is a friend you cannot play with. It will come for you. But when we all die, the state must not die. When we all die, the country must remain intact. When we all die, we must ensure that generations of Namibians yet unborn must be able to remain more radical and jiggy than us. So, generational distribution is exactly what I mean. Let the economic wealth of Namibia be distributed equitably to everybody, rich and poor. And do not look at a person and judge them on the basis of their age or which village they come from or where they were in 2012 or whatever numerical date you want to attach or affix to it. Even the future date of so-called 2017 is irrelevant. The ones who are over-attached to such dates are actually political witches. Because no one, including all of us who are here today, are absolutely certain that tomorrow we shall be alive. How then are you prophesying? You are not even, what are the other men? Bushiri, you are not even Bushiri. Or T.D. Joshua. You are not even those ones. Anua, come 2017, will show them. Are you sure you reach there? So, I have now finished. And I have these notes, I'm sure it will be distributed. Now the question is, what is to be done? What must be done? And what is your role in it? Are you going to remain a spectator? Are you going to remain a human being on behalf of another human being? You know these things exist, eh? In the Inca civilization, when somebody dies, they are even prepared to die with that one. But it's only in Namibia, I have not seen it. The moment somebody dies, nobody goes to that killer one. Nobody goes to the mortuary and stay. The moment somebody dies, they don't even visit the cemetery. So you go alone. So what is it then that we need to do? I say to you all, get involved. Get involved. By any means necessary, get involved. Even those that want to physically, as in physical science, want to repel you, you repel them double and get involved. And get counted and remain counted. What else do you need to do? Go to the people. And this same advice I give to those who are ruling. Go to the people. And do not think that the people are less important than you because of your air condition. Air condition also expires. Listen to the people. Respect the people. Because you would not have been what you are without the people. And the first government, a government which must be respected at all times, is a family. Let us strive in our individual and collective capacities to empower and strengthen families anywhere, everywhere in Namibia, in 121 constituencies, 14 regions. When we are a strong family at household levels, we will become strong as a nation. When we mess up as families, the nation is doomed. Not even consultants from China or America can help us. Let us stand together as a family. And those of you who continue in that programming of parroting, everything expires. There is time for everything. Even when you are the best puppet, there is also a deadline for that one. So don't think that you can parrot and you can, backbite others, etc., and Jesus will remember you. I think even Michael Jackson, maybe Jesus also did not recognize. Because when he said, "Ow!" I said, "Are you a man or a woman?" So, be yourself. In all you do, be yourself. As young people, you have the potential to become the greatest, no matter what. Sometimes times would be harder. Sometimes it may look like clouds are not going to dissipate. But eventually they will go, and remember what? The rainbow will shine again, and you are the rainbow. Remain firm on the ground. Take part in the governance of your country. Take part in the governance of our country. And do not be pushed too far by those who think they have the power. The power they have is not comparable to the power of God. God who has made you, and God who has made them, and God who has endowed both of you with the oxygen free of charge. participate in the party politics. Those of us in SWAPO, participate in your party in SWAPO. This is our party. Those of you in DTA, in APP, Bishi, whatever, just participate. It is your right, it's a constitutional right to partake in the affairs of your country. Just be you. And you should not be confined to this or that. Just be you. And don't be afraid. And then, finally, remain a patriot in the interest of the people and of the country. If you choose yourself to be a bubblegum, just remember, when the sweetness is finished, you'll be spit out. And when you are spit out, you regret a regrettable regret. And at that point, not even Satan will want to befriend you. I thank you very much.
Why invest in Namibia and not invest in Namibians? And some people almost killed me for that. Yeah, but you know, the same way with today's lecture, I think, can we maybe think about intelligence for poverty eradication? Why are we saying poverty eradication? Why are we not saying wealth distribution? Because if you speak of poverty, you are actually speaking the language of the poor. You are not speaking the language of the rich. Because if you speak about wealth distribution, then it's a whole different level. You are speaking about wealth. You are speaking about people that actually have things in their head that they need to distribute to others. So I think maybe we need to look at that as young people and start engaging from that position and asking questions without being afraid, like Comrade Ngurare has mentioned, that we need to start asking questions. Why are we not having
informed as to what is basically the best approach that young people should pursue this idea of intergenerational politics, making references to international comparisons and stuff, for us to understand whether there are some areas or there are some places in the world where intergenerational politics and sustainable development have been pursued or amassed in a manner, in a dialogue that is more peaceful, not radical. Is there anything of that nature perhaps?
Actually, I have a question which might be a little short, but it's just something that has been troubling my mind for a while. I want to know who's the real Elijah Ngurare and what legacy he wants to leave behind.
What in your view, what value? Because it was mentioned 2 or 3 times, also part of the introduction, Marxism. In your view, Dr. What value do those foreign conceived ideologies have for us? You know, to uplift us, to speak to the question I think somebody asked in terms of us not knowing who we are. For me, it speaks to one aspect. It's a lack of self-knowledge. We don't know who we are. We don't know enough where we come from. And if we don't know where we come from, we don't know where we're going. Okay? Because the future is sort of like conceived in the light of yesterday. Okay. So, Doctor, what is your view on Marxism as a viable ideology to develop an African nation as we are? And maybe also touching on the aspect of Pan-Africanism. Somebody said, let's do away with the tribes. No, I think let's not do away with the tribes. Let's just become Africans. Because once we become Africans, we are what? We are Damara, we are Nama, we are Wambo, we are Silozi, everything. Okay? But I think trouble arises in the way when we start to take on a different identity. When we start to take on Europe through education institution, through what have you. Okay, maybe just if you can answer to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm an activist. I really, my contribution, Chief, and everyone here, really has to do with the little that we are trying to address here. We are in a serious problem, we are in a serious struggle, and we don't seem to realize.
it has to do with the psychology of our generation. And I'll give you two examples. Yesterday we were driving in Angola, and then it was on the Tjitunga radio. The NBC presenter, and I'm taking serious issue with that, the NBC presenters announces to everyone else that you can call in, but you are not allowed to mention the name of any leader who you think, whether it's a governor or minister who's not working hard. Don't mention the name. This is a national broadcaster announcing like that. And then people call in complying with that nonsense. But when you praise people who are doing what you mention their name, but nobody sees anything wrong with that. Again, in that part of the country, we are saying 60% of the population is young. They said government drug relief. He works for the office of the Prime Minister. Now, when they go and distribute this food from our budget, the idea is that people are affected by drought, it's a geographical area, but those councillors and those politicians who have been in power for 20 years, they have a law that comes from Norway. They say that if there's a brick house in you, you will not get it. But there's no government policy like that. So meaning that if you have a criminal that came to Windhoek, and that criminal stole money and built a small room in their grandmother's house, the grandmother would not get drug relief supply. But nobody does anything about that. But we are 60% of the population, and the crisis is deeper. Helmut Angola gets diamond, and he puts in a daughter in the diamonds. Now he's channeling the benefits to his nephew. But he stands before people and at a rally and speak about inequality and people sharing, and everyone is clapping hands. There is something materially wrong with that, with our psychology of our generation. Now, last year, you see somebody in the Ministry of Finance in this country, they don't actually tell the truth. Somebody put us in serious problems. Of course, the leadership generally squandered money, but somebody in the Ministry of Finances, you know, for example, you have 5 friends and you project that your 5 friends each are going to give you 1,000. So you have 5,000. Okay? Now, they projected that we are going to receive 5,000. In actual fact, what happened, we are only receiving 3,000. So in terms of budgeting, that's where the crisis is. But nobody is telling people what is going on. Now, then they started with the process of cutting budgets. But in this country, we still have 2 deputy ministers. But those guys, if you just demote one to be MPs, nothing is wrong because they can still be, they still have a salary. The president is not taking a decisive decision that we are cutting costs, but he's keeping 2 deputy ministers. Advisors are increasing every day, but we don't see anything wrong with that. You see, we have one of the worst deals in mining in the whole continent. What has happened that there was a license, an EPL that belonged to an Australian guy. The Australian guy went to Europe, and in Europe, he sold this EPL to a Chinese. This is a transaction, $1 billion worth transaction in Europe, selling Namibian land. This guy came in and said, look, I bought this license, I want to open a mine. The Chinese put up mine. Now, and they offered 10% to Namibia. Now, how was this 10% offered? We are now the 3rd producer of mining. This 30% was offered to the government through a Pangelo mining. And the Chinese said, but this 10% you have to buy it, several billions. And then, no, we don't have money. No, don't worry. We're going to give you money from a Chinese bank. Now, the lifespan for Pusab is between 15 and 20 years. What basically happens now is that after the profit is declared, then they say, okay, in Namibia, this is your money. But remember that logo. So it's actually bullshit. We are not getting anything from Pusab, and we will not get anything for the next 15 years. Ask any friend of yours that worked for Pangelo mining and everywhere. But in a financial crisis we are facing, the public debt is now reaching 40%. But nobody is saying that let's renegotiate Pusab. Nobody is saying let's renegotiate loss in uranium, which is 6%. Nobody is saying let's get it, because they increase Parliament and National Council with close to 40 politicians. Nobody is saying let's amend the Constitution, rectify that mistake. Nobody's saying, let's put a limit to appointment. They say that no overtime for you to travel. No, there is a restriction, but not at the highest level. So what I'm trying to say is that we're actually in serious trouble as a generation. And every time I have love and hate for my generation. Because I personally hate weak people. Like, how can you stand before the politician, a corrupt politician, and worship a person like that? So that is a crisis that we have. We are doing what we can to raise this type of consciousness. But we are seriously troubled. I can't understand. And perhaps, Chief, you can reflect on that. It's a serious crisis that I can't comprehend.
The same, like I would argue, sustainable development and sustainability and all that rubbish. It's all bourgeois words that has been created by the capitalist class, not only to dupe the working class primarily, but also to steer their thinking, their behavior, and their actions like an equilateral triangle. That is my positioning. And I see all my academics and all my teaching and all my lecturing to students. I don't know how many students I've had in my life, high school students and varsity students. I try to impress on them that if you talk wrong, you're going to end up doing a wrong action. This is my position. So I'm a South African, and I'm sick and tired of listening to Comrade Blade in Semande, who's an SACP guy, but he's so confused in Marxist terminology that when you look at what Engels and Marx had actually written about scientific socialism, then you can't define what they say. It's undefinable the way they use the word revolution, the way they use the working class. It's undefinable because there is no revolution. And then they say they're communists. But if you look at what communism is a natural process which comes with the withering of the away of the state way after you've achieved the socialist state. So why are they still calling themselves SACP when there's no such thing as communism around? I can't speak for Namibian parties because I don't want to enter that fray. But some parties have got old names, like Southwest Africa. There's no such thing as Southwest Africa anymore. But it's become Namibia. So how can a party still call themselves by a name that has been created, first of all, by the colonialists, and then carried through? So what I'm trying to argue, the point that I'm trying to argue now, is primarily and firstly, when you do academics or reading or when you do studying or anything, first ask yourself if your use of your terminology is correct. What is sustainable development? In terms of the Rio conference or the other conference or the other COPs that followed, COP 17, COP 18, COP 19, the Johannesburg conference and all that. What does all that mean? Who thinks that the working class don't go there? The working class sits on the road and look for jobs or beg for money to park your car. Whether this is Namibia or South Africa, it's the same thing. The working class has been kicked in the teeth, downtrodden, and deprived of education, deprived of psychological health, deprived of physical health, deprived of housing, deprived of proper schooling, deprived of just a life the way your lower middle class, your upper middle class, and your middle class can go forward in life. Naledi Pandor sends her children to the poshest school in Rondebosch, but she sits in parliament in defense of the president, citizen number one. And then she argues and says that Chris Hani name must be protected. When in Parliament she can't protect that name of Comrade Chris Hani. So we've got what I call contradictions. Contradictions upon contradictions upon contradictions that flood your brain. You're so confused about the terminology that you use that when you write a paper or when you write something, then it is rubbish. You must make up your mind whether you're going to talk about sustainable development, and I beg your pardon, Doctor. You must make up your mind, is it sustainable development or is it the sovereignty of the working class? Is it working class consciousness that we want to strive for, or are we going to talk about sustainable development? Because once you strive for working class consciousness, then automatically there's gender equity, automatically there's the withering away of racism, of seeing the people in terms of the color of their skin, and examples such as those. So, to me, it is important to say, okay, you're a socialist and you believe in accountability and transparency and equity and efficiency and effectiveness and all that nice words. But when people control things, when people are empowered, when people are engaged with one another, they don't use that terminology. The only thing they know is that we want peace, we want a good quality education, we want to partake in this massive technological revolution. We want to go to a computer in the middle of the road and press some buttons and get that information and not pay an enormous cost. Because when cost comes into it, there's always discrimination. So there's discrimination between who've got money to pay and who haven't got money to pay. There's this discrimination between who's got the knowledge and who hasn't got the knowledge, who can graduate and who can't graduate. So for me, it's important to say, are you a socialist or are you a capitalist? Make up your mind now. What do you want to be? If you say you want to be a socialist, then use the terminology that has been laid down by Marx, Engels, Lenin, Krupskaya, Chernyshev, Plekhanov, and all those writers. They are not wrong. In fact, Trotsky's their morals and ours. In Trotsky's their morals and ours. You can read what is immoral. And what is moral and what is immoral. In fact, you don't have to read Trotsky anymore like they used to read Trotsky in 1920 or 1930 or after his death in the 40s up to the 1968 and 69 when the Fourth International was around. You don't have to read Trotsky like that anymore. All you can do is just look for the key words and say, that is what I like. You don't have to read long Lenin's volumes anymore. You just need to say, look, Lenin says in this part that the procedure is this, or in terms of what is to be done, this is to be done, this is done. It goes back to educating the people. It goes back to empowering people. It just goes back to engagement. So my thesis, and working on a doctorate now at the moment, I'm talking about empowering people, and I'm talking about making people engage with one another so that they can give feedback amongst themselves and whoever takes charge of the state. But anybody can participate in the state, but when people begin to say, look, we don't want you there, we want you to be there, then the realms of the state and the realms of power begin to change. If I say I don't want the Jacob Zuma anymore, then it won't happen, but I don't vote them into power. But if I remain backward and unschooled, and they feed on my...
That collectively, as this generation, how do we get it right to change our society in the way, in the manner we think, in the way we do things, the way we understand ourselves, because it seems, in my own opinion, we don't understand ourselves. We don't know who we are. What is that we need to do to change our society so that at least we can pull on one direction?
What have we done so far, and what are we going to do? Basically, what I'm trying to say is that I have seen the map. I will not say where I work, but only that I also have the map. But nevertheless, what's happening is that those EPL, whatever they call it, they have a time period that they are going to expand after 5, 6, or 7 years. Now, what we're supposed to do is this, that we go to the ministry, doctor knows much better the name, to the other ministry, and inquire. If you ask for the map, they will give you. It could even be that even at your house they put an EPL, because that's basically the duty of those your people that they fly all around the country. They are just scattered all over the EPL. Now, if you know that there's an EPL somewhere that you are interested in, then you keep monitoring the process in such a way that when expiry date, because they can even give you that when it's expiring, so that when the expiry date comes closer, then you also apply. So that if they don't grant it to you, then you can come back here and say that we have APL, A, B, C, and D, we applied, but they never did anything to our application. Rather than coming here and just saying we need to have equity and so, but we are not doing anything. I have a case whereby last weekend I went to OS. It's a Namibian citizen who was allocated, we call it mining claims. But then the system itself now, they say we should not refer to other people, but I don't know the better way to put it. There was a certain group of people, the administrator higher in the hierarchy, that said they already know this area, somewhere close to Brandberg mountain. We should be aware of that mountain. The longest in Namibia is like, if I'm correct. Now, what happens is that they have been monitoring this process to say that when these mining claims, they are going to expire, we are no longer going to renew them on his name, but rather in Kafita's name. So, because this Namibian comrade, it's from, we call it the advantage group. It's not being racist, but it's a white guy. This white guy was very clever, because now when he got the information, what he did, he only said that he took one of his black guys that worked for him, that he said, look, there's rumors that these guys at Mines and Energy, they want to hijack this APL. Now what's going to happen is that I'm not going to apply for a renewal, but I want you to apply for a renewal so that they can be granted on your name, then we continue working. Now this process, I could testify that it's close to 60%. This mining claim is going to be issued in the name of this black guy, but they are still they have investors already, they're still going to work with this white guy. That's basically what I'm trying to say, that are we doing the same? There are a lot of other things that we go, that we can do, not only to minings, but we're also failing to stand together. We all want this thing of me, you, and you. But sitting in Kafita said that, Kafita, I'm having 800 logistics. In case you find people traveling from Katutura to Eros, please call me. Then it usually doesn't happen. What happens is that I already arrange for any other cousin of mine that, in fact, is not into that business to take over the customer that Kafita is supposed to benefit from. That's what we call sustainable living or sustainable development. Therefore, if you cannot sustain me, then I might not be able to sustain my kids, and my kids will not be able to sustain theirs. Henceforth, colleagues and comrades, we need to work together. Let's formulate kind of, I don't know how to put it in those WhatsApp groups. Information is power. Nobody would deny you information. If they know you use a different name, don't say you attended an AR thing where you heard them talking. Just tell them, I'm a Namibian citizen, I want information in A, B, C, and D. Because I should took note of the comrade from the Stellenbosch. One of the papers that I have, it's also from Stellenbosch. But when we were doing those things, I keep questioning these people, what do you do? Then they answer, no, my father is having a white farm. Now, what will you do after you have graduated? You tell me, no, I'm not going to look for the job. I'll just work on my farm. Literally means that engineers, whose father they're engineers, they're mainly studying engineering. Pharmacists is the same, so that they keep sustaining their own system. And that's basically what's lacking within our own blood. That's the black community.
That question on wealth distribution as an emphasis, in other words, placing emphasis on wealth distribution as opposed to poverty eradication or alleviation. In other words, we are thinking more as poor instead of thinking as somebody in need of wealth. Is that correct, Biage? Yeah. I think it is it's a good point. I think I saw it also somewhere, whether it's in our group or some group of this WhatsApp. I'm still learning. where that discussion was, and there were some people who were not. I think some peacemakers are not happy with how you do it. Yeah, but I think really that question, when I listened to my sister here, Comrade Hilda, and my brother Tamwade, and we interact with them, when I listen to them, I get inspired because they are speaking exactly what you are saying. It's not all doom and gloom. Just like the Bible says, it says, if you work hard and sweat, from your sweat you will get your bread. Is that not what the Bible said? Now, the one that works hard and has defined their goals, they have defined what it is they want to achieve in life. In this case, it's maybe for that wealth distribution. I think it can be achieved. However, if you come to some of our fellow blacks who are now rich and ministers, and you say, you declared, because I heard people have declared. So you say, oh, you declared 10 million. Can we find a way of distributing this so that we too at Kambimba can benefit? They will accuse you of witchcraft. But don't give up. Don't give up. I think the country itself as Namibia, the continent itself as Africa, is not poor. But the poverty is with us. Maybe in the heads, I don't know. Some missionary came to my mother in Kachina Kachi and convinced mother, to this day, we are still arguing, convinced mother that black people, their level of intelligence is as long as our hair. And the white people's intelligence is longer than their hair. So mother believed it. She said, yes, these things you can't do it. You see, you only those ones who have long hair can do it. Some of us, when we grew up, we were told that your head is very hard. That's why you can't do mathematics. Have you never heard of it? Okay? And you grew up believing it's too hard. Mathematics is too hard. My cousin Kanyanga believed his head is too hard. To this day, he believes it is too hard. So, but I believe, in answering to your question, there is really a prospect to be able to do that. And that is why we are speaking here of generational distribution of the wealth of the country. It is not going to be easy, but it has to be done. And do it if needs be. Sacrifice now so that the generation after you wouldn't have to sacrifice. I think that is how I would answer that. Now, my brother Marcus, I like your way, and I would say as follows. We must have diverse ways of achieving our generational goals. If somebody wants to kneel down to be nice in our generation, let's afford those people the opportunity to do it and achieve it. If there is somebody who wants to do it in another way, all I know is that even Jesus had to be very radical in order for those Pharisees not to misbehave. No, I mean, not misbehave, I must be very religious. In order for those Pharisees to be very honorable. So because, you know what I mean. So, in answering to your question, I think there are many ways to kill it. Or is it to kill a cat? Yeah, to kill a cat. But this generation must define that and say, when we are going to a pastor, this is our approach. When we are going to the other person who behaves in this way, this is the approach. When we are going to that village and we have to find a way of getting land, this is the way. And you'll find that when you add 1 + 1 + 2 in the same generation with a common denominator of moving forward, chances are it may be diverse ways, but the common denominator is moving the generation forward. I think so. Because if I say to you that, no, you are too nice, you are sellout, I'm actually selling out to the generation. Because nobody, we are even here in this hall, we are not homogeneous. isn't it? We are different, diverse ways. Yeah, maybe some, sometimes you see there is a black person. When you see a snake, your first response is to run, isn't it? Yeah. But when you give a snake to a white person, they touch and play with it. Now, the young whites of Namibia, they also need to be part and parcel of this generation. And they also need to move with us forward. And we are also not saying that the children of ministers, they have no space in this generation. No. Their lives are inextricably linked to ours. Even if what they are eating and drinking, even they shower in the milk, doesn't matter. Their future is inextricably linked to here. So we must be as diverse as possible. But let's bring our common denominator together and say, this is how we want to move forward and move forward together. The other day that you are more smarter than me. So my legacy is to ensure that your generation must become more smarter than my generation. And through that, Namibia will shine and outshine all nations of the world. And that is my hope. With God's help, I know nothing is impossible. And you will become the president of Namibia. And I want to repeat it again. It is not true that Namibia does not have the capacity to govern this country in a manner that it should be governed. Accountably, transparently, and maybe effectively. So there are Namibians here who can act as better consultants than some of the consultants we have in government today. But the problem is that we have adopted a culture where we say that one is blue, blue is not from my Mbishi tribe, and therefore he must not be picked, even if blue is better than the one picked. So when Mr. whoever that Comrade Tjitunga has spoken, decided on what he has decided to do, in that particular ministry of that ministry, it is not true that those comrades do not know what he's talking about. They do know that. But somebody in there is a friend of that minister. That is only how it is happening. You see, people are telling us that, no, Namdia, it was some kind of, magic spell. So they're trying to tell us that Namdia is magical, So out of all, these are the best who came out. And then when you unravel it, the composition, even genetic composition of these comrades, it's so interrelated, including the DNA and everything. When you trace it really goes to where people are looking and say it came from here. You can see it where it came from. So it's not by accident. It's not by accident the construction of certain things happening in the society. The same for South Africa. The same for South Africa. We got independence before you. And what is happening in South Africa, we were taught about South Africa, the Zulus, the Dingaan, and all these things, the Bokdrekens. We were forced Afrikaans, and our mothers were wondering this Eerstetal that we were being forced to speak. We went to our mother, Eerstetal, Uchanet Mudertal. So we wanted to look to South Africa as a model of hope. There are so many Africans. My father was a mine worker in South Africa. So many Africans are streaming to South Africa. Even if there is poverty, they are going there. And Zuma is your president, the best you have apparently. Hazel, you are in which grade? Hazel is in grade 5. But some people in grade 3 are lawmakers. No, you see, I'm relate. You see, some of these things, you see, we are nice at sugarcoating it. Yeah, we were expelled already, so we have nothing to lose. We can even be expelled again. It's fine. But the issue is that until and unless we speak truth, that's why I was quoting the Ghanaian traditional leader. Knowledge is within Africa, in our villages. There are better professors there than many of those dead Europeans you mentioned. But, as that other Basil Davidson or whoever who said that we are in this blessed black mask and white faces, what did he say?
Black skin, white mask, panel.
Yes. In other words, we have been made to believe that black, even, you see, just do an experiment from Stellenbosch, just go to Katutura here, don't go far. Take a white doll and a black doll. Go, just experiment. Give the black doll to the black kids. The parents there are going to say you are a witch. But give them a Barbie, the parents will love you. You are close to God. So we laugh about this at the primitive level. You know, we are saying, oh, this is no, no. You know, our presidents are not different. Our ministers are not different in terms of behavior. We have been criticizing Trump. Just wait when Trump calls them. That's true. Just wait. They are going to laugh from mouth to ear in 1 second. Because the master has spoken. The master has spoken. That is why some of us are encouraged and inspired when young people, like the young one there, was able to stand up and speak in the public on matters of her generation. That's why we are encouraged by young people, these ones who are doing this against all odds that they face. That's why we are saying, let us go to the people where we have all come from. And there's no need for us to continue believing that the knowledge that God is instilling in us is somehow subordinate to somebody else, be they Chinese or whatever they are. So we have hope, and hope is here in these young people. And that is why when I'm appealing to you to stand together, it's because there is strength when you stand united. And you are going to become weaker when you are fighting amongst each other. And there will come times, there have been many trying times they have gone through. Worse is still coming, but prepare for it. And don't give up. Don't give up against all odds. Stand Njikiti. Some of you might not remember what I'm saying about Njikiti. In the middle of the river, any river, there are areas where the water moves faster, and there are areas where water moves troubled. The reason why the water moves troubled is because under the water there are rocks. And those rocks, no matter how troubled the water overhead, those rocks never move with the flow. Njikiti. They remain firm. Yeah. So that is what we are appealing to you, your generation. You see, things may be tough. You see, the water might be troublesome sometimes here and there. You may be cursed. You may be ostracized. So many things may be said about you. Your girlfriend might even go and sleep with the enemy. Your boyfriend might even leave you to go and be like a Zumba. And don't give up. Don't give up. Because when you give up, you betray your generation. And God who made you will be disappointed that, but I gave you a path. This is a path. But look where you went, kachikiriri here, kachikiriri there. So, we can have many theories. We can have communism, socialism, we can have so many things. But if I go either to Shadi Kongoro, or if I go to country, if I go to even to Mdaungila, if I ask them about socialism, You look at me. Social chicken? But if I ask them about humanism of Zambia, of Kenneth Kaunda, yes, they will understand. It is who we are. So yes, my young friends, let's learn all these new terms, but let's apply them with common sense. Because otherwise, they will land on thorns instead of a fertile ground. We say, insult where you are going, not where you are coming from, because you return. So, this young man here, he was very young, very little. Very tiny, yes, very tiny. Every time I see him, even when we were in this momentary exile, I look at them, they inspire us. I look at them, they inspired me because they never gave up. They stood firm. You see, some people, when we criticize, they say, "Oh, yeah, because you have revenge, Yari." Yeah? You see, the country is not a farm of somebody. The party is not a skorokoro of somebody. It is an ideal, and it is that ideal, despite imperfections, has delivered freedom in this country, has delivered independence in this country. Ours is a duty to preserve that for this generation and for the generation to come. You see why we say that your generation must define 3 things. Remember them? Generational what? Generational sovereignty. The other one? Generational representation. The other one? Generational distribution. So I start from the comment of the activist of his generation. The generation is not prepared to betray. And therefore he speaks about what is painful to him and to his generation. And sometimes, oh, my comrade Lapaka again. But now, yeah. Sometimes, some of your generation, oftentimes they were saying, they were even used to be the agents to attack him. Yeah? They say, go attack him. He's a child of this one. He's a child of this one. And then some of those peacemakers, they believe that. Some even given money to do it. So what you have said is true. It is known. Raw singing actually 3%. Yeah, it's true. It's not a secret. We went there, remember, we went there one time. It's 3%, and Iran has some, and then the British and Australians have the rest. So it's not a secret, it's true. Epangelo. No, I mean, I'm talking about Epangelo, the company. Yeah. Epangelo is something we advocate, because there was a time they gave EPL of 50 years. To somebody. Then they gave another one for 25. So, you see, some of these people, they think that we hate our leaders. No. That time it was Comrade Pohamba. We went and we quarreled properly. Then in the end he said, Elia, hey boy, is not right. That time the minister was in China. Yeah, you see, my sister remembers. Then they made a moratorium on this dishing out of EPMs. And from there, the work started to set up what we call that there must be strategic minerals should be managed in a way. Yeah, my Tama remembers. Yes. We said that strategic minerals of Namibia must just not be dished out like that. Eventually, work started now coming in for a Pangelo. In fact, we were very explicit what we demanded a Pangelo should be, not 10%. We were saying that the law that empowers us to say 51% Namibian, 49% foreign must be applied. Foreign Direct Act or whatever they called it. That's what we said. And lo and behold, when the company was set up, the CEOs were appointed, the board of directors were eating, things just changed. Things just changed. Like now, when I don't even hear much about a Pangelo. Don't you? Look at this Namdia you are talking. Where's the Pangelo? In Namdia, the Pangelo. How many percent did you hear about it? It's nothing. The good brothers who are talking of tobacco, what is a Pangelo? Nothing. So we were saying that a Pangelo must have a stake in any strategic resource of the country. Franz, remember, he used to be at the headquarters. You see, so what you are saying is true. But remember what I said, generational sovereignty. So who is going to pay for this debt? Those in the sunset of their lives? No. It's Giselle. It's the generation of Giselle. They are the ones who are going to pay for it. It's your children. Yeah, if you are planning already to do that chromosome business, like it or not, they are part of this future. They can pretend as much as they like. They are part of this. They can jump as much as they like. They are part of this. So, what I would say is that I know it is not easy. I know it is difficult. But still, I will repeat what I said. Do not give up on your generation. Reach out, talk to all of them, if needs be. Bring them. Even if you need a hammer to hit the head to get the truth, just take a hammer, a plastic one, not yeah. Just komora, ko. They might wake up. The same with NBC. I don't know what has become of these things. To the extent that people are prepared, they're just prepared even in the broad daylight to tell what they know is not true. They just say it. How do you say it? No. When you are criticizing, don't mention it. Then you say yes. Yes. When you are praising, please louder, can you do it loud? Then you say loud. I think even the Bible is against those things. I think so. I don't have a real scripture, but I think somewhere in the Bible they probably say that there must be a limit to puppetry. I think so. The holy limit to puppetry. That you must have a limit to what level you can do. Yeah. So my brother, on these terms, you see, you remember I said it here, that these terms, they sound very nice. So they are borrowed terms. I mentioned them here, and I said, when you go to Nkumbula and you mention some of these ideologies, they may have no relevance. They may not have a meaning to our people. And on an academic level, even the word Africa is a name given us by Europeans. Africa was named and given to us by Europeans. I think we were called, there's a man who was known as Rio Africanus. It is where the name Africa has come to us. Did you know that? So when we say I am Africa, is that's what it means. Somebody discovered apparently this Africa, and then from there, maybe he was the first or whatever he was. I think somewhere in North Africa, I think it's Italy. I think it's Italian. Yeah. So it is better, as what you have said. Let us be empowered with knowledge of self and pride of self. I think that will help us better. But then it goes further than that. We feel English when we speak English, more English than the Queen. I'm not sure whether you want me to say this, but you see, it's very difficult. I don't want to be excommunicated tonight. You see, okay, let me put it this way. When I was growing up, our sisters, you see, they used to use certain things so that they can look white. Should I stop? You see, so like I had a sister, very black, I mean very chocolate. Yeah, very chocolate. But this my sister, she was very light here like Brazil, ne? Here. But very black. Just like that shade. And then ourselves, if I take off my head, you see there's no hair. Including Bloomy there. See Bloomy? Look at the hair. Yeah, you see him? So when we were young, we did not, there was a catalog, and you tie it very nice overnight to sleep while it's burning, but it's for beauty. Yeah, the whole night you are sleeping. So in the morning, now the hair is properly paired. You are now almost like white. So even the walk, and by that time we have never seen whites except soldiers, South African soldiers. So when this hair looks pale, even the walk was like this. But then the lices, no matter how much you bend, they come. And they just time the moment you are talking to a girl, that's when they come. And they just come down. And then the girl will say, Tarena. So the point I'm saying is that the self-appreciation, self-knowledge, self-confidence in self, let us maybe do more now that we have acquired so much exposure of so many things. Let's use that to change some of the customs that we have gotten. Let us look at our sisters when they have the natural skin of chocolate and appreciate that chocolate. Let's not give them pressure to look Brazil in order to look nice. And you, the guys, don't go to such extent that the pants are here and you can't even walk properly to feel cool. Once you go black, you can't go back. So beauty is in Africa. That's why Steve Kekana said, all we need is right here in Africa. Even if it means to do that thing that Comrade Eames was proposing. You know those things? The procreation of Africa so that the Garden of Eden can be rediscovered. You know what I mean? So Zambezi does it for Karas. Karas does it for Kavango. Kavango does it for Kwambi. Omsati does it for Maheke. Omalala does it for Omalala does it for Rehoboth. Rio does it for Kunene. In the final analysis, and I know we have been here for long, and through the director of ceremony, really our strength lies in us standing together. And many of you, actually, you have driving licenses, but some of the cars that are driving and transporting our dreams are being driven by those who do not have licenses. And they do not also not know how to drive. So, which destination are we going? Chances are we will bump. And if you are sitting next to this person who's driving and does not know, the time is now to approach the person and say, IT, comrade, you know, actually, I can help you so that we can arrive safely. And you must do it respectfully so that, you know, you don't want to make people faint while they are driving. So the accident might happen. And then when it happens, it will be catastrophic. So on that note, thank you so very much for your attentive audience. And if there is one message you should take home that each one reach one. I am because we are. And it is not true that there is anybody who is hated. Even those who are failing us, we don't hate them. We are constructively trying to engage them so that they don't drive without a license. So we love them, but some of them are in the sunset of their life. They don't really care whether this car should overturn or not overturn. And above all, God is for all of us. And God will not allow that we surrender. And I hope we won't surrender. And very soon this one will become a bishop. And when he becomes a bishop, he will be a minister of wealth distribution.
It's up to us to ensure that management of resources is done sustainably and that the state acts as a guarantor of intergenerational equity. The former president of the USA, Abraham Lincoln, on the 19th of November, 1863, faced a tough question. And the question was, whose government is it really? And his answer was, and I quote, government is for the people, no, it's government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from earth. So it is up to us, unquote, to ensure that we participate wherever we are.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think that on the 9th of November 2014, when D. Job and George occupied some place in Henekuba, I don't think they imagined that the struggle was bigger than themselves or even bigger than land. And shortly after that, people then started asking the question of what is to be done about other things that we have problems within our society. And then, other issues came to the fore, issues that are not necessarily about land. And one of the questions that people continuously ask today is that, has affirmative repositioning lost the plot as far as the struggle for land is concerned? But the real question, and for some of you that may find yourself with this question amongst your colleagues, is in a country where relevant youth leagues and youth movement, without necessarily mentioning anyone in particular, have become irrelevant, what is to be done? And the answer is affirmative repositioning movement. This evening, I would like to thank our speaker, Dr. Elijah Ngurare, for such an informative lecture. Here at the AR Consciousness Dialogue, what we strive to do is provide a platform where we engage youth critically by providing information and inspiration. Some of you will agree with me that for any movement to remain relevant and for it's continuous, young people must continuously be informed about things that affect them on a daily basis and possibly things that may affect them in future. So thank you, Dr. Ngurare, for being with us here today. Thank you to you, our audience, for always making time to be here with us today. We are because you are. And thank you to Natango Photography for being part of our proceedings this evening. But in closing and summing up what Dr. Ngurare has said, a friend of mine called me this afternoon and she was telling me that they're going to have a meeting at work, I think tomorrow, about how they will not be able to pay their employees. And I'll explain why this is relevant. And I must say that if I do get a bit carried away, George there, the mayor will direct me. But I find it so relevant to what you have informed us today, Dr. Ngurare. You see, the question of sustainability, and even when we're talking about intergenerational equity, is that intergenerational equity deals with the fact that we hold in trust the natural and cultural resources for ourselves as present generations and in trust for future generations. And the question of sustainability, in as far as Namibia is concerned, without even looking at natural resources, is that we have never had a plan for sustainability as far as anything is concerned. And I will explain why I say this. I was telling Dr. Ngurare a few weeks ago that when we find ourselves in a fix and government being broke, although no one wants to admit it, is because when the tenderpreneurs started tendering for tenders, they tripled and quadrupled their prices. And they did it without a focus of what would happen tomorrow. Now you have construction companies that are closing down. You have construction companies that are unable to pay employees so close to the festive season. And these are the realities of Namibians on the ground. But what the problem is that even in the question of sustainability of natural resources, as far as we Namibians are concerned, is that you will find yourself one day taking your daughter Hazel to an aquamarine because there are no angelfish left in the sea when we had so many of them. And those are the things we really need to think about when we leave this lecture today, because we already have the problem that we are sitting with, because we simply failed to plan or allowed those without driver's licenses to drive us. I once saw a poster that said that one day the poor will have nothing left to eat but the rich. Because the reality is that even if one day they decide to leave this country, they probably won't make it to the airport because we would have caught up with them by then. For the pilots that will take them out are our brothers like Abner here. Sorry to put you on the spot, Abner. But what is more important is that we really take this message home. Because sustainable development is what holds us today and what will hold our children tomorrow, unless, of course, you do not intend to reproduce. But also to appreciate the fact that as human beings, we are interdependent and interlinked. Comrade Ngurare spoke of Principle 2 of the Rio Declaration of 1992. What that principle simply says is that states, as sovereign states, have the right to exploit their mineral resources to whatever extent they may want to, but without harming the natural environment or causing damage to neighboring states. The same applies to us as human beings. We can explore and exploit the resources at our disposal, but without causing harm to the man on the ground and the child that will be born tomorrow. If we lose focus of that, we lose focus of ourselves as human beings. So, ladies and gentlemen, finally, yes, I know I just came here now, it's like I'm giving a speech. It's important that obviously you as young people that are here today, remember that when you are called to positions of leadership and power, you may remember that you don't serve yourselves, but you serve the people that you have left back in the townships, the 121 constituencies of Namibia and 14 regions. It is important to carry the message of hope to the people, to inspire them, and to give them information of what we have learned here today. Like Talishi, who has brought Hazel, maybe the many more of us could bring our grade 5 daughters and nieces, because they too need to understand the problem that we are in, because it is only when all of us are enlightened that we can bring the fight to a finality, if ever that is possible. But finally, may I leave you? I said finally 3 times. May I leave you with the words of Arthur Ashe, who was a tennis player and ironically an activist of his time, who said, wherever you find yourself, start where you are, do what you can, and use what we have. We must acknowledge that we have we are greater in numbers, and we must use that to our advantage. And in the words of Robert Sobukwe, may we today and every day that we come to this critical consciousness dialogue carry with us when we go to the outside world a vision of a Namibia reborn, a Namibia that will not relent, equivocate, nor compromise.